So there's this big hullabaloo going on in the state of Indiana in the United States, whereby the Indiana State Governor, Mike Pence, I believe is the cat's name, has written into law this thing called the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. It is basically, in a nutshell, this Religious Freedom Act that is sanctioning a form of racism and discrimination. It's kind of like a form of racial profiling, only it's actually made sort of pseudo-legal under the idea, the auspices of one's religious freedom. And I find this absolutely baffling. I'm baffled by religious people and people who believe in the Bible and they don't read it and they don't understand all of the things that are contradictory and outlandish and absurd and all that kind of stuff, and are supposed to be all lovey-dovey hugs and kisses and bunny rabbits and chocolate bars among friends and hug to humanity, following the sort of preachings of Jesus Christ and all this kind of stuff. Yet they can be so hateful, so bigoted, so discriminatory as to put into law, basically bridging the gap that we're supposed to have separation of church and state, but put into law a very religious sort of, not very clearly defined from what I've gathered on the topic, form of basically judgment and racism and very homophobic and discriminatory attitudes. And this is just, it's like a new low for religious idiocy. And I would like to propose sort of, in reaction to this, I read an article from somebody I'm a big fan of, Moxie Magnus, aka Brantley Moat, who wrote an article, basically answering to calls by celebrities like George Takei, who is, a gay person. And basically there has been a lot of talk about, let's boycott the state of Indiana and all this stuff. And I have to kind of lean toward what Moxie Magnus was saying, in the fact that there are going to be a lot of people in the LGBTQ sort of, aesthetic that, is their lifestyle, who are going to need support in tough times like this, and need brothers in arms, whether you're gay or not, whether you're, religious and open-minded and you're not as discriminatory or psychotic as these people seem to be, or you're like me, somebody who is not gay but knows people personally who are and considers them family, or this, that, and the other thing, bisexual, all of these different, things people can list as their particular sexual preference. The whole thing is butt out of other people's business. How can you actually pass into law a discriminatory outlook like this that is very much akin to racial profiling? For all intents and purposes, somebody comes into your business and you can send them packing because they don't look right to you, or they seem effeminate to you if they're a man, or they seem masculine if they're a woman, or whatever like that. I mean, where is that boundary supposed to lie? I mean, this shouldn't even be put into action to begin with. But I was thinking about it, and I was like, what this really needs as sort of a counteraction is that division, once again, of church and state. I would like to, put into effect something maybe along the lines of the division of inclusive church kitschiness, or DIC for short. Put that into law, where basically these people can practice their religious freedom and they can turn people away and be as discriminatory as they want, only they can no longer preach their gospel, preach their word, preach their Bible, and their Jesus love that is very selective and only if you conform to their particular beliefs, without it being within their own sort of business framework or within their church. They should no longer be allowed to spew their hateful, bigoted speech out in public and have the same sort of restrictions that you want to impose on other people imposed upon yourself. Basically put your money where your mouth is. And I would like to put this into action, actually, the division of inclusive church kitschiness, DIC for short. I think this is a law that should be passed in Indiana. I think we should put this into effect, hashtag DIC, because quite frankly, this is absurd. It's an absurdist sort of reaction to something that is natural in the course of evolution and in the course of nature. And, I don't care what your little Primrose Bible says, actually read the damn thing, okay? There is a whole host of absolutely absurd things that you don't conform to in your lives in the modern age, you absolutely cherry pick out and ignore, and you're just, using certain aspects of that whole holy doctrine, big time air quotes, to your own benefits and everything like that. I don't understand why this has to be the focus. I mean, it seems like humanity, at least in Indiana, at least in the religious sort of doctrine work, is very much backpedaling to those eras in the 60s and such, where we had bathrooms for blacks and bathrooms for white. It's very much that whole aesthetic of if you happen to be a Mexican driver or an African-American driver of a vehicle, you'll be pulled over by the cops just because you look suspicious because your skin is a darker color. Now we have people saying, well, if you look a little effeminate, well, if you look like you might be homosexual, I'm going to turn you away. I'm going to judge you. You're evil. You're going to hell and all this shit. It's bad enough that they can just spout all this hate speech and think they can get away with it. Freedom of speech is saying things, but it's not freedom from consequences. And there are going to be some harsh consequences to come when future generations behold that open-mindedness and that understanding of humanity and acceptance that we're all different. It's sort of that Star Trek aesthetic of infinite diversity and infinite combinations. And that is what humanity ought to be about. And unfortunately, we have a lot of backwards sort of, countries in the world where people are getting stoned to death, people are being, mutilated and hung in public, streets and forums because of their homosexuality, and it's evil. It's absolutely sickening and torturing to my soul, and it just sets me on fire to think that we have this, a sort of similar aesthetic going on in one of the states of the Union, the United States of America. Absolutely just enrages me, because these are people who are supposed to be about love for all. They're supposed to be about having, an embracing of equality. We're supposed to accept their beliefs and, treat them as our own brothers, whether we agree with them or not. And yet they are passing into law. They are bridging that gap, putting the X in effect of church and state with a law that, again, is very much homophobic. It's very much a sort of racist doctrine, if you will, based on the excuse that it has something to do with religious beliefs. It's like mind blown that this could ever go beyond the sort of, pre-discussion stages and actually become a law. And I think, boycotting this state, much as Moxie Magnus has said, is a bad idea. I think you got to go to this state. I think, it should be a communal time for people who are in the LGBTQ, sort of framework. Anyone who considers themselves friends of that framework, or anyone who considers themselves to be that particular sexual orientation, they need the utmost support in Indiana. And I feel like, that whole state, the next step is going to be sort of the Spanish Inquisition Part 2 in Indiana, if they keep putting things like this forth. And once again, it's just one of those things that's so baffling to me and so enrages me. And I think the perfect antithesis for this Religious Freedom Restoration Act is the division of inclusive church kitschiness, because that's what it is. It's very much a sort of derogatory, downtrodden opinion of man's humanity to man, and it needs to be fixed. This is a sort of psychological problem. I don't know if they need medication. Let's get some psychology professors in there and start passing out some medication, because the Bible ain't doing it. As far as making humanity sort of, something warmth and compassion oriented in the state of Indiana, where these people are, basically concerned, and something needs to be done about it. It's that simple. I can't grasp it. I don't understand it. All I know is it is ignorance at its most tantamount level in the history of the United States. We have so many progressive states that are accepting these, different walks of life, and whether that be people from out of country, whether that be different races. I mean, we are all genetically the same at our core. And yet you have people who still want to make there be a division between race and ethnicity and, belief systems. And I mean, we're talking about religion where, Jews down the street, as opposed to Christians over here and Catholicism over there. And I mean, let's not have Allah in town. I mean, we can see that they are very much inclusive to their own little bubble. They live in their own little sort of bubble framework, and they can't see beyond it. They can't see beyond their own noses. Something needs to be done about it. I would go so far as to say abolish all religion. Just abolish it. Just get rid of it, because it doesn't make sense in this modern era where we have embraced science and technology and we can see so much of the provable universe and existence and all that kind of stuff. There is no call to ever say that we, know everything, and we can't perceive something necessarily that is in an ethereal realm or something beyond the scope of our awareness in this tangible world, like a deity or something along those lines. But if you're going to be this psychotic in your belief system and hateful and bigoted, you have a problem. You have a psychological problem, and you should be on medication at the very least. So, just wanted to have a rant about this topic because it's absolutely just boggling my frickin' mind. And, down with the assholes in Indiana sometime shortly. #Dick.